The 92nd edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
It's not about you. It's about that name on the front of your jersey.
And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma.
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good. 63-62. 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Rebounded by Weber. Michigan out of timeout. Weber front court. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. How about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
That's it! Make room for 2017. The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
That's what it's all about right there. That's on the floor. That's on your shirt. That's in your heart. That's why we're all here.
This is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services, and today we are looking at the matchup with UCLA. And Anthony, this is going to be an interesting matchup. You got two of the sport's most accomplished programs in Carolina and UCLA, but two programs that are not where they want to be record-wise. The Heels enter 6-5, losers of 4 in a row. UCLA 7-4. This is a program that barely beat Cal Poly to start the year. They've lost to Hofstra, got blown out at Notre Dame, and so both teams are really. This is kind of interesting because it's only the middle or in December, but the season kind of hangs in the balance for both of these teams entering this ball game.
Well, I think this year, if you want to say the direction in which they're going is somewhat similar, I guess you could make that argument. But UCLA has not been UCLA for many, many years. And I think it's a great debate now as to whether or not, maybe they're one of those programs, kind of like when we talk about in college football, Nebraska or Texas, that just, had their stretch where they were really good, had a historic coach in John Wooden, but now we sit here and we say, okay, are they really where are they really this great program anymore, or will they ever be? But you mentioned it. I mean, they've to get beat by you said struggle against Cal Poly. But did they win that game?
Yes.
And then get destroyed by Hofstra, I think, is the biggest issue. I mean, let's be real honest. Hofstra is nowhere near a program that should be beating a team like UCLA, especially a team that is expected to come out and win a Pac-12 championship. So basically what I'm saying is that this is a game that is very winnable for Carolina, and they're going to need some of these with where they're at right now with all the injury issues that they're having, and then be able to find their footing as they try to correct some problems that they've had on the offensive end. All in all, I think this stacks up to be a good chance for Carolina to come out and get a victory against a UCLA team that is just really not all that great.
Yeah, the winnable game, you're exactly right. And this is, of course, Carolina's going to be without Cole Anthony. There will be no Sterling Manley, of course, in this game, but still very winnable. And the way the schedule sets up for Carolina, if you find a way to win, you get to 7-5 going into, you have 9 days in between this game and when you come back to play Yale after Christmas. Your next 4 games after UCLA are all at home. You got the Yale game, and your first 3 games to start ACC play are in the Smith Center. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of compare it to when football was at Georgia Tech, where if you felt like you won the game, you felt good about going into a break, how the rest of the schedule planned out. Of course, Carolina, they're in a bowl game. They'll play Temple next Friday.
Right.
Carolina, you find a way to win You get to 7-5. Your first 3 ACC opponents are Clemson, Georgia Tech, and Pittsburgh. I don't know the order off the top of my head, but even in those games, you feel confident that you can win all 3 of those. All of a sudden, then you're 4-1 in ACC play. You're 11-5. You're not worried about making the NCAA tournament at that point because you feel like you're trending in the right direction. And so that's why this game was very important. You got a lot of positives from the Gonzaga game. You got above 80 points. The offense appeared to be in a lot better flow, and a lot is because the play of Jeremiah Francis.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who's still coming back from injuries. He's now nowhere near in game shape, but has appeared to inspire the team with his effort. Anthony Harris has come off the bench and given this team a lift. And so you feel a little bit more comfortable as Roy Williams is still plugging and playing with the lineups. And this is a normal spot where Carolina is at this time of year where you don't have a set rotation yet. The problem is that you don't know when you're going to find a set rotation because of all the injuries, but you feel comfortable that at some point you're going to at least have your point guards position solidified until Cole Anthony returns with Jeremiah Francis.
I think it's in pretty good shape as of right now. I think, you got KJ Smith who's starting, and I think, there's some people that, kind of, I think, realize at this point that really, he's kind of a liability on the offensive end. But that's, you're kind of dealing with that. And I mean, look, you can't really give the kid a whole lot of issues because he wasn't expecting to play this type of role for this Carolina team. I mean, this was a guy that didn't even start when he was at Pacific. So I think that the emergence of both Francis and Harris is huge for this team going forward, especially Francis. He feels like that type of guy that can develop into a really, really good player. It's just as we talked about on the recap podcast the other day, how much can you actually play him is the big question because we just don't know where his health is actually at. If it's where they're wanting it to be, maybe we see him a little bit more. But, Jay Billis pointed it out on the broadcast the other night. He still has a little bit of a limp whenever he walks back to the sideline. He's not 100%. So I think that, having him there, showing some signs is big. I think it's really encouraging for Carolina, but you still have to temper expectations a little bit. I think a lot of people now are going to come into this stretch and really expect Carolina to win every game and handedly. Let's not act like all of Carolina's problems are just solved. They still lost that game. They still had some turnover issues. They still did not look good on the defensive end. So there's some things that they've got to work through. But there's a reason to feel a lot better about this game than we were feeling after that Wofford game. After that Wofford game, we probably would have looked and said, okay, if they can go 2-2 in this stretch, that would be probably the best hope for them. Now, there's a legitimate chance that if Jeremiah Francis can build on what we saw from him, Carolina could win all 4 games and could show people that, hey, we're going to be one of those teams that's going to be from, somewhere between, 4 and 7 in the ACC, somewhere in that area in the standings. So I think it's a chance to build a lot of confidence. I like the comparison to the Georgia Tech game. And, it's going to be big for them. And I think that 9-day layoff after the game's over is actually going to be huge, especially for a young team like they are, for Roy Williams to be able to get in there and really have a chance. He's had moments where he's had 5 or 6 days to work through it. Now you're going to have pretty much 8 days to work through this, and then you'll have 1 day where you're preparing for UCLA, the whole time you're at practice. Having 8 days to be able to work on some of the things that you've seen as a problem is going to be huge.
Yeah, as we focus on the UCLA game, look, this is a program that's in transition under first-year head coach Mick Cronin, who's a quality head coach. He did great things at Cincinnati. He never translated into tournament success. The furthest they ever got was the Sweet 16 2 years ago. But it's a guy that his program's going to be all about toughness. UCLA's never been known for being tough. They've always been flashy, especially under John Wooden. And when Steve Alford was there, when they had Lonzo Ball a couple years back, that was a team that run and gun. They were never going to buy in defensively. So it's been a struggle getting them to become a defensive-minded team first. They put 4 guys in double figures. You've got Chris Smith, a guy he's a junior, so he's been around a while.
He's interesting. 6'9" as a guard. I'm going to be interested to see how Carolina guards him. That's a big-time guard.
Yeah, and then you've got Prince Ali, one of my favorite names in college basketball. He's from the Bronx, so he kind of brings the attitude to this team that they need. But this is still an offense. We talk about Carolina struggling to score. UCLA's in the same boat. They only get to about 73 points per game. That's 163rd in college basketball. And it feels like the past couple of years, UCLA's been a team that Carolina's played, whether it was in Las Vegas this last year or whether it's in other areas in the CBS Sports Classic, that if you get them up or down 10 or 12, they just roll over and quit because they didn't have the fight or the attitude to want to come back. That's kind of gone with Mick Cronin, that he's only going to play guys that he knows are going to give 100% effort. But it's still a team that is going to struggle to score the ball, which kind of favors into Carolina's hand because they're kind of in the same boat. This figures to be an ugly, low-scoring game, which we've talked about on here at length. Carolina's going to have to win games like that. That was with Cole Anthony, and that's even more prevalent without him. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle, or how do they take what they did great on offense Wednesday night into this game. You can make a lot of it that they scored 80 points because it was the highest possession game they've played all year.
Right.
If UCLA cuts those possessions down by, let's say, 10 to 15, can Carolina still get into the 70s? The only way they do that is if they make shots, and they have struggled to make shots at any rate this season.
Well, that is possible. The other way they can do it is because UCLA is struggling offensively, you've got to get on the defensive glass, and when you get the rebounds, you got to run. And that's why we want Jeremiah Francis out there a lot, because he pushes the pace. Anthony Harris pushes the pace a little bit as well. So I think that's one of the ways that Carolina can gain an advantage in this game. And another way is, look, we talked about Chris Smith being 6'9". I'm interested to see who's going to be on him, how they're going to guard him. The rest of the team is really not that big. So I think that, again, one of the focuses, and I mean, unless he just has some of the worst luck ever, Armando Bacot is not going to get into foul trouble within the first 2 possessions of the game again. So I think Carolina's got to take advantage of the size that they're going to have inside and find a way to, get some easy baskets. That's been the biggest issue for them so far this year on the offensive end, is the shot selection is just horrible. Part of it is because at times they can't get to the low block like against Ohio State, but most of the time the biggest issue is that they simply don't put the ball inside like they should. And that's one thing that Jeremiah Francis has focused on, even KJ Smith has focused on, getting the ball inside. Now the thing is we in the last game against Gonzaga, there were some times where they turned the ball over where they had looks inside. Your passes have to be smarter, and you've got to be able to find those baskets that are there on the offensive end because, look, UCLA is going to be just like Carolina. The only way they're going to stay in games is if they play good defensively. So, I think it's going to be one of those ugly, low-scoring games. I think, Carolina, believe it or not, this year, very young team, this is a game where they have an advantage because UCLA, just looking at their roster, I don't know the exact statistics throughout all of college basketball. They've got to be one of the youngest teams in college basketball. They have on their roster 4 total upperclassmen. That's it. Everybody else is a freshman or sophomore. So while Carolina may not be have a ton of experience, they're going to be the more experienced team in this game, and I think that could pay off.
Yeah, I totally agree with the ball's got to go inside. Look, Armando Bacot last 2 games, 3 of 20.
Right.
Right. That's got to get better. We don't know what struggled or what caused a 2 of 14 at Wofford.
Can we address this just really quickly? Is it maybe okay to say that he's not like he's dealing with an injury that, it's got to be something. It's got, to me, it's that ankle that's been bothering him these last 2 games, because am I the only one that just doesn't think he doesn't look as aggressive as he was during that stretch where he was starting to pick things up, especially on the defensive end? That I think that ankle might be starting to bother him a little bit more than it's known.
You can say the ankle. He's got to be tougher with the ball at the rim.
Oh, definitely.
You just saw against Wofford and Gonzaga, he appeared to be I'm not going to say intimidated. He just seemed to be a little bit more timid. When you get the ball, Garrison Brooks has done a good job these last couple games. When he gets the ball and he's looking to score, he's strong with the ball. Armando's got to be a little bit stronger with the ball in the painted area. You've seen Brandon Huffman and Walker Miller come off the bench and give you something, but we're not going to ask those guys to give us points. You need both Brooks and Baycott to score and score at an efficient clip, and that's something they just haven't done since the time down in the Bahamas. So who wins tomorrow and why?